69, dudes!
Good evening, everybody. This is another episode of Rock Hard Caucus. This is a very important episode, actually. It's a big milestone for us. This is our 69th episode.
Never thought we'd make it.
Finally, I get to say this is our 69th episode. We're all very excited about that.
It's the sex number.
It is the sex number. Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll get to 420 someday.
Oh, God.
But give us many years.
Oh, yeah. We usually do like 2 numbered episodes a month, so it's going to take us a long time to get to 420. I'm Justin. I've got Evan and Natalie here tonight co-hosting.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
I'm in a much better mental state than in the last podcast we recorded directly after Knotfest.
Yeah. We were a little sleepy.
Yeah. Very different subject matter for this one, too.
Yeah, this is a little bit more, would you say serious? Is that an adjective that makes sense? This is a more serious subject?
I guess.
It's a little less about entertainment and culture. This is more about rules and government and the people who run our lives, I guess. But the three of us, we're not super qualified to talk about such a serious matter. We've got an important guest tonight, and I'm going to read this guest's bio from his articles that I was reading yesterday. So we've got Evan Berger. Evan Berger is a longtime political organizer who lives in Slater. He was the Iowa Caucus Director for Bernie Sanders' 2020 campaign and is now a partner at the progressive consulting firm Hegemony Strategies. Welcome to the show, Evan Berger.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Yes, I'm one of those vermin of political consultants.
Well, we like you right away for that.
Heap abuse upon me. I deserve it. No, I should have sent you my bio. I wrote a couple articles for Jacobin back in the day. That one was a little bit more hard hitting.
Yeah, this is your bio from Bleeding Heartland, which is a little softer.
A little difference between those two outlets there.
Different audience.
Yeah.
So we're doubled up on Evans tonight. And I got this bio from your articles that you wrote about the redistricting process, which is ongoing currently. You've written 7 of these so far. Do you plan on writing more of them?
I do. It's an addiction. I mean, I love electoral politics because it's, it matters in our lives, but also there's like a numbers component that gives it like this veneer of objectivity. Right. And I think redistricting is a good example of that, where like, if you get too deep into it, it's just like, it's just all about the numbers. You don't have to think about people at all. It's just like the numbers tell us what's happening. It's like numerancy or whatever the spell casting with numbers is. But then you take a step back and you're like, oh wait, this is actually there's more to it than the numbers. There are real people involved, and data is important, but it's not everything. People can change their minds, and numbers aren't. Anyway, so yes, redistricting. I'm obsessed with it. It gives me this a sense of calm when I look at these numbers and I look at these maps, and it does impact our lives to some extent. And I think if I'm going to spend all this time on it, I might as well share it with the world at large. So that's what I've been doing.
In addition to the sense of calm, do you get at all a sense of dread?
I get a sense of hatred for the Democratic Party.
Okay.
We like
Evan knows what to say on our show. Yeah.
No, I mean, I might as well just like dive into my hobby horse on this topic, which is I need to mention it more. I wrote an entire Bleeding Heart article proving this point, but I need to like bring it back up again and again, which is that redistricting will not save us here in Iowa. We are a red state right now. yes, there was population growth in urban areas, but as long as Democrats just see themselves as a party of urban and professional classes, we're screwed here in Iowa. It's going to be a permanent Republican majority. And again, this is where redistricting is helpful. I can show some numbers. I can, if you look at the numbers, it shows that there are simply too many rural people in the state for Democrats to win with their current party coalition. And I don't see anyone in the state Democratic establishment who's really come to terms with this fact. And that's why I feel a sense of hatred. It's like, or anger or whatever you want to call it. It's, it's like I'm going to live here until I die. What happens in Iowa is going to directly impact me and my family. And no one seems to have any sort of sense of urgency around the fact that, Republicans have a permanent lock on the government.
Right. Yeah. And your bio said you live in Slater. How small of a town is that?
It's pretty small. We got a grocery store still, which is good.
Yeah.
That's good.
We've got a Casey's, of course.
Is it old brand or new brand?
Oh man, they haven't changed the sign.
Right on.
Okay, that's classic.
Yeah.
But the next town over is one of those towns that has 2 Casey's and no other gas stations. Huxley has. Yeah. So we're not quite to their level yet. But I live in Slater. What is it? I don't know, 1,500 people probably.
Okay, yeah,
south
pretty
of Ames.
Small. Yeah. Oh, south of Ames. Okay, so are you represented by Republicans right now? I'd imagine so.
Hell yes, I am.
Yeah, okay.
Randy Feenstra.
4th district.
Yeah. Fourth district,
guy.
of course. Yeah.
No, so we're right on the border. So like a mile that way is Polk County.
Yeah.
And but I'm in the Story County.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right. Yeah. In your articles, you wrote about Story County as part of the your examples of hypothetical futures.
It explains my obsession with this particular area.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't bring it up earlier, but one of the first things that you said just now was, I love electoral politics. And I would just like to just point that out again for everyone listening. That is the quote to pull from this episode is, I love electoral politics from Evan Berger.
No, I don't have any. I've totally accepted it. That's why I wrote that consultant thing into my bio. It's like this is my it's like whatever. I'm a sinner. I accept it. Like this is look. Here's how I think about electoral politics. I'm proud member of DSA, proud member of Iowa CCI.
Mm-hmm.
I think that whatever. There's these multiple arenas of struggle, and one of them is electoral politics. This is the one that I happen to be good at. So this is where I'm going to spend a lot of my energy, not all of my energy. Obviously, I still want to do stuff in other organizing spaces, but we can't just write off who's in power writing the laws that govern our lives.
Yeah, we shouldn't cede that ground entirely. Yeah,
exactly. So
yeah,
I don't know if it's defensible, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just see it as an either or thing, which is, I think, kind of discredits both, outside organizing and electoral politics. Because it can't, there's things that can happen, it's just not the things we necessarily hope for at the best, but.
Oh, I didn't do this on purpose, but this is my shirt today.
Yes. He's John Green for supervisor.
Yeah.
John Green's a great example. I've known John for a long time. And, I think the vision with electoral politics is that, the movement and the electoral arena have, a dialectical relationship, right? Where a positive dialectical relationship, they feed off each other. You have electoral wins that builds the movement outside of, in the streets or whatever. And that builds electoral wins, so on and so forth. And eventually we get to a revolution. But I think John Green's a great example of, someone who, I don't know that he'd put it in these terms, but takes seriously the crisis of the Democratic Party in our state and in our country.
Yeah, I think he would agree with that from the conversations we've had with him. He said something, I think, when he was on our show a few months ago about how the people in power need to start taking these crises seriously, or there's going to be more violent consequences for them. I don't know if he used those exact words, but that was the idea.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more in terms of he models what like a Democrat should be, but that's a great thing as well. I mean, the timing, we're recording this show on Thursday night in the midst of this like congressional shit show.
Oh yeah.
And, all I can think of is that Simpsons screen, the Democratic National Convention. And
like we hate life and ourselves. We can't govern.
No, we can't govern. It's like, oh my fucking God. No wonder people don't vote for you.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the point?
Yeah.
So I guess, what's the deal with Hegemony Strategies? If you want to pitch that to us real quick.
Okay. I mean, I don't have to, but since you asked. Yeah. So I, like you mentioned, I worked on Bernie. I actually worked for Bernie both times around, both presidential campaigns. Yeah. So in 2016 or 2015 mostly, I was the advance director, which was an interesting experience. That meant that I put together like all of the events around the state, which was like it was kind of in my wheelhouse, but it was very divorced from organizing. So I wasn't a huge fan of that. And then in 2020, I had something that was more in my more aligned with my interests, which I was the Iowa Caucus Director, like you said. Part of that was I ran the data department here in state, again, with this thing with like numbers, clinging to them as some sort of comfort object.
Some level of abstraction from the real horror.
Yeah.
And so I worked with some, we had an amazing team. We put together an amazing team on the data side of things. And like a modern organizing campaign really just runs on data. Electoral organizing campaign runs on data. It's all about, is this person a supporter? Are they not? Is this person likely to be a supporter? Likely to be a volunteer, so on and so forth. And so I worked with two people specifically that I worked with were Harry Baker and Steph Munson. So we did the Iowa thing. All three of us worked on the recount as well, the caucus recount. That was fun. We can talk more about that. And then we went off and we kept working on Bernie, like with other states, whatever. But then Bernie, we all know how that went at the end. And we went off and we were all doing our own things, kind of like independently consulting with campaigns. And after a few months of that, so like I did Jamal Bowman, I came on at the end and helped out with data there. And it was like, this is good. This is a good thing to do during the pandemic. Like there's not going to be like an office that we can go to. So we might as well just like work remotely together. So anyway, whatever. So we started up this company so we could bring the gang back together. And our vision is we want to bring presidential level data support to campaigns and organizations of all sizes. So I learned all these amazing tools and like methods and, analysis on Bernie. And it's like literally every campaign should be doing this. And that's the model that, got me over my hatred of this term consulting. Cause like, Indira Shoemaker is never going to be able to, a campaign for Des Moines City Council isn't going to hire like a data director, but if we can cobble together 20 of them, we can make a living. So
yeah. Okay. We should try to get her on the show, by the way. Just a note for us. Okay. So I think I want to save the like caucus shit talking for maybe the end, because that'll be fun, I think. But let's get like really nerdy about the redistricting first. So on a very fundamental level, I mean, I sort of know the deal here. There's a census every 10 years, and once that data comes out, every state and the whole country uses that data to redraw congressional lines and like state legislature lines and stuff like that. Is there anything I'm missing from that just very basic knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, that's the short version.
All right.
The next step is that, each state determines how they draw those lines. And in Iowa, we have a very unique system.
Okay, so like everything else, kind of, the states get to make up their own rules. It's like that with basically every step of elections, it seems.
Yeah. It's like we're laboratories of democracy or fascism, depending on who's in control. Yeah.
God, America's so stupid.
States' rights, man.
That's such a dumb way to do this.
It's almost like the rules that we set up, that some dudes set up back at the beginning are, maybe out of date and should be revised.
Yeah.
Like,
because Iowa could make up some dumb rules, but it impacts everybody else. It's not like it's like self-contained within the state. Like, this is how like electing president works. Every state just like gets to decide really what's happening.
Yeah.
So what is unique about Iowa's process for redistricting?
So historically, Iowa has had a really good process. Stop me if I'm getting too in the weeds here.
No, go as deep as you'd like.
Okay. So back in like the 60s and 70s, Iowa hadn't redrawn the district lines for decades. New congressional data had come out and population had shifted significantly, but the districts had stayed the same for, I want to say, like 30 years.
Wow.
And finally, it got bad enough that someone sued and it went to the state Supreme Court. And they said, yeah, this is a joke. Like, there's twice as many people in this district as there is in this one. You can't just do this.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, so what came out of that process was the Iowa model of redistricting that whatever everyone loves to talk about. And what that basically means is that the census results come out, and then instead of them going directly to the legislature and the legislators get to draw maps based on those results, they go to the Legislative Services Agency, which is a nonpartisan government agency that serves the legislature. Full disclosure, I worked for the LSA I worked for the LSA like in college on like IT stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
I wasn't involved in redistricting at all, but they do all sorts of things for the legislature. But this specific role is like, is like well-defined. They take that census data, they draw the best maps they can come up with, and then only at that point they send them to the legislature, who gets to vote that first round map up or down.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say best maps they can come up with, the things that they look at in decreasing order of importance are any map has to be contiguous, meaning like you can't have like a blob here and a blob there.
Right.
And it also, for congressional maps, they also have to be made up of whole counties. So you can't split Polk County in half.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like that's the paramount importance. Then the second most important thing to look at is population equality. So there is like a federal standard for population equality. Roughly what the courts have determined is that all districts have to be like, I think somewhere around like 0.7% of each other in terms of population. But Iowa has, the LSA uses a much, much stricter standard of population equality, whereby, there's a difference of 99 people between the largest congressional district and the smallest one
mm-hmm.
in the currently proposed map, which
Nice.
Is crazy. I mean, it's great. It's extremely equal. It speaks to the time that the LSA put in where they found a map that was both extremely equal and compact, which is the third measure that they have to take into consideration. So Iowa code defines two measures of compactness. Again, stop me if this is getting too nerdy. but there are, so compactness is the idea that districts shouldn't be these bizarre shapes.
Mm-hmm.
And Iowa code has two mathematical formulas that you can use, that you have to use to determine whether one proposed district is more compact than another proposed district. They're called length width compactness and perimeter compactness.
Okay.
Do you want me to go into it? I don't know. You got to tell me when to stop.
This is very geometric now.
Yeah. This is down to geometry. And actually it's topography is what I think about
Mm-hmm.
when I look at this, where it's like, I'm sure there's a way to, or whatever. There are formulas that maximize or that minimize these or optimize these formulas.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's the field that they fall under.
Right. Okay. So this is how we ended up with just like the 4 quadrants.
Yeah. So if you think about it, like a long rectangle, the most compact way to split it up is basically to do like 4 quadrants, like you said. That minimizes the perimeters, and it also minimizes the difference between the length and the width of each district.
Yes.
Yeah, this is way less interesting than Knotfest. I'm sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. Okay, so the LSA, remind me what that stood for.
Legislative Services Agency.
Okay, they come up with a good map, and then the state legislature votes that up or down.
Yeah. So the LSA takes these three standards into consideration, and they have to balance the three, which is where where the objectivity breaks down, because there's no way to say like this much compactness is worth this much equality. So like there's always a judgment call involved. And the LSA makes that judgment call, which is good because it's better that they do it than the politicians who are directly impacted by these lines. So they made the judgment call of here's the map that best balances population equality. Again, they did it extremely well. Like they made a map that was extremely equal with compactness. So the map they drew is not the most compact map. It is, and it's also not the most equal map, but it is the map that best balances, in my opinion, those two standards. So at this point, they send it to, well, actually, since we're nerding out here, the next step is that there's a public comment period.
Right. And that just happened, right? Yeah,
that just concluded. It's conducted by this commission called the Temporary Redistricting Advisory Commission, TRAC for short.
The TRAC, yes.
Yes. And so they held 3 public hearings this time. They were all virtual. And you could also submit written comment. So they listened to all these comments, they compiled them into a report, and then they send it to the legislature saying, here's the LSA's proposed map. Here's what the public had to say about it. Now it's in your hands. And I will also just mention that this time around, the TRAC report, the vast majority of the comments during that public comment period were in favor of this map, mine included. I submitted a comment.
Right. I was going to ask, I assume that you observed these meetings. This was the 20th, 21st, and 22nd. Was there anything notable that happened at these meetings aside from just a bunch of affirmative comments about their map?
Yes. Okay. I mean, whatever. This is all anecdotal, but here are the things I noticed. So first off, there's this crazy libertarian dude.
Okay, this is what I like to hear. Yes.
This was the only commenter who got shut down by the chair. Like literally, they cut his mic.
Yeah.
And as libertarians are wont to do, he was like quoting the Constitution and shit. And it's like, bro, like I do not like. I'm in this. I'm very deep in this world, and I have no idea what you're talking about. Like. Oh, I remember what he was talking about. He was talking about, he somehow connected it to Tom Miller, the Attorney General, the Democratic Attorney General. They must have some beef with Tom Miller. And, he was demanding to see, to make sure that there was no communication between the LSA and the Attorney General's office. And it's like, this is great stuff.
Right. Because the LSA is not supposed to take any sort of partisanship into account when they're putting their maps together. Yeah.
Do they just use like a computer model to just spit out a bunch of maps that could fit the criteria, basically, and then just sift through them all and decide which one looks the most appropriate?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because like this is a case where like computers have gotten I won't say infinitely, exponentially better. Even in the last 10 years, since the last time we did this, the computers are so much better. So like now any of us can go on, there are these websites where you can just draw the map and see what the numbers are. And, the LSA like has their like proprietary or whatever, they pay for a version of that software. But the tricky part, of course, is that judgment call where it's like, okay, there's a small number of maps that meet these criteria of like they're equal in population and they're compact, but, which one best, balances the different considerations, and they can't take partisanship into account. They just take, compactness. And
you know what it reminds me of?
Why don't they simply kill 99 people so that everything's equal? We can do a lottery
equality.
And just kill 99, and then we don't have to worry about that.
I was going to say it reminds me of like generating like NFL schedules where they have certain criteria for like who can play who and when. And then it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, or Moneyball or like fantasy football. I mean, it's any of this stuff, and like, look, I'm just going to say it. A lot of these people on Twitter who are like, redistricting Twitter is a lot of people like that who only, they're just like looking at these numbers and seeing how well the numbers can fit together.
Yeah.
And I feel bad about myself when I participate in those conversations.
Do people gamble on this?
I'm sure there's something going on. My friend Pete Del Sandro has talked about he's like a old Chicago guy. Talked about some sort of wagers that took place on the Chicago lines. I can't remember what it was.
Wow. Okay, so an additional complication this time around is that the census data was delayed because of COVID stuff.
Well,
and what is that?
Partially
why?
because of COVID stuff.
What was the other reason?
I mean, Trump was trying to decrease the number of people of color who are counted.
Sabotage. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, there was a thing with the questions that was like a big political battle.
Like not asking people if they are citizens or not, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the citizenship question was a big thing. There was also like funding and basically whatever. He was running this incompetent, like his whole goal was to like dismantle the federal government, and the Census Bureau was like a big part of that.
Right. Okay. So that because of that delay, we missed some deadlines in Iowa where like this was supposed to be done like 2 weeks ago, right?
It was supposed to be done in April.
Oh, okay. I remember seeing a September 15th deadline for something.
Oh, yeah. That was like essentially when they wrote these rules, they said no matter how badly the legislature fucks this up, they'll definitely have it done by September. So, it's like, no way will this thing drag on until September. So let's just set it as September 15th. And then September 1st was one deadline in September. 15th.
Okay.
Our government's really good at kicking the can down the road. That's one of their biggest favorite pastimes.
Is this the first time that we've blown past that like last deadline?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Even come close.
Okay. There's something in the Iowa Constitution that possibly gives the Iowa Supreme Court the authority to just draw their own lines if we miss that deadline, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And it seems like they just chose not to do that.
That's exactly what they chose not to do.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the backstop. It's like, okay, if the legislature fucks things up so badly, they don't even get it done by September 15th. If it doesn't go into effect by September 15th, then the Supreme Court can take over. And the whole reason behind this is like, again, going back to what happened, like why this whole model came about. Yeah, the legislature was like not doing their job and the Supreme Court had to intervene. So when they rewrote the laws, they said, they rewrote code. They said, well, we're going to take over if they continue to if the legislature continues to do a bad job at this.
And this was back in like the 70s, like you were saying before.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was 1971 was like the first map that was drawn under this model. So it was the 60s. Yeah. Right. So the Supreme Court played very coy with this whole deadline. I mean, for something that like is, I think, pretty broadly impacts, Iowans. Yeah, they definitely kept their mouths. They were very tight-lipped about it to the public. They were not tight-lipped about it to Republican leadership. Okay. So they issued this cryptic statement. I mean, honestly, you guys should read it. It's like. It's like interpreting the tea leaves over here. It's like, and this was back at, when it was clear that like the census wasn't going to release data until very late. Yeah. The Supreme Court issued this statement saying, we like the Iowa model. We're going to, we're going to make sure that the Iowa model of redistricting is followed. And it's like, oh, great. So that means you're going to follow the laws. It's like, oh, and then you read it again. And it's like, oh, wait. Maybe that means that you're going to like let the legislature ignore this deadline. Right. So that's what it turned out to mean, is that they let the legislature ignore the deadline. However, so they didn't say anything about it again for months and months on end. Fortunately, like Republican leadership in the legislature doesn't have very good message discipline because they... one day I was like checking my Google alerts and I had one set up for, redistricting Iowa or whatever. And I saw that this I can't remember, this conservative website, it's like Freedom Square or something like that. I can't remember. Town Square. I can't remember what it's called. I'll have to look it up. Had this interview with John Wills, who's a member of the Senate leadership. Mm-hmm. And, he's like, oh yeah, the Supreme Court said that like we're fine, like we don't have to worry about the deadline. it's like, oh, cool. I wish they would have told like everyone that and not just you. But I'm glad you just like, blabbed about it to this reporter, air quotes.
It seems like justices just all over the country are very dedicated to publicly maintaining that like facade of like objectivity. And so they never want to like outright make any kind of like statements that give any sort of hint as to their judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but at the same time they know which side their bread is buttered on.
Well, yeah, they were all appointed by Republican governors, and like Republicans run the whole state. So
yeah. So yeah, that's the story of the Supreme Court's role. So yeah, I guess to close it out, on September 14th they issued a statement saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to let the legislature keep doing their job. The new deadline is December 1st." So as long as they get it done by December 1st, they're good. Yeah. Which, again, wish they would have told us that a little earlier, but at least they set some sort of deadline, because now that it's entering the now that the legislature gets to consider these maps, that's when the real danger to redistricting comes in.
Right. And you got into this a little bit in your Bleeding Heartland articles. So the legislature is convening on October 5th to vote on the first map.
That's correct.
And because the legislature is dominated by Republicans, it seems like they're going to vote that down, correct?
That's, if I had to put money on it, that's what I would put money on. I would, this kind of comes back to the interesting things that happened in those track meetings. Mm-hmm. So, there was the crazy libertarian guy. That was fun. But the more like worrying one was this like guy who had like very clear talking points that to me sounded like this is the Republican playbook and they just wanted to get it on the record. Yeah. Which it all hinges on rural representation. So again, in our current partisan coalitions, as we all know, Democrats can't win a seat in rural Iowa to save their life. Right. And so, you can, if you don't want to say like, oh, we want a Republican map, all you have to do is say we want a map that preserves rural representation. Uh-huh. So yeah, he adds like stats on it or whatever. It's like, okay, maybe you put these together, but this also sounds very similar to what the Republican consultants on Twitter were saying. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that was the other interesting thing that happened in track. That to me, and I think there are other indications that Republicans are going to vote this down. Like I said, I would put money on them voting it down, but it's not 100%. Like the kind of other factor that we have to keep in mind is that so this is the first map. The legislature only gets to vote it up or down. They can't make amendments to this first map. Right. So LSA sends the map to track. Track sends the map to the legislature. Legislature says, yes, we want this map, or no, we don't want this map. If they vote no, it goes back to the LSA. LSA draws a second round map using, roughly the same criteria that they used for the first round. They send it to the legislature again. Legislature for that second round map again gets an up or down vote on it. If they vote it down, it goes back to the LSA for one last map, a third round map. Yeah. And that third round map goes to the legislature. And at that point, the legislature can directly amend the map. They can write an amendment saying, we want to move the boundary of House District 52 from 2nd Street to 3rd Street. Or they could write an amendment saying, strike everything, and instead we want these districts which that are more favorable to them. So that's the real danger. And I think, the fact that there was some stuff in the public comment period that, was related to that. And also I think the Supreme Court's kind of willingness to look the other way are like the arguments that this is something we should worry about. The one nice thing about the Supreme Court's statement or interpretation or guidance is that this December 1st date makes it a little bit tricky to get all the way to a third map. So like, obviously here we are on October, it's September 30th now. Right. And the legislature hasn't even voted on the first map. So if the LSA takes their sweet time turning around the second and the third maps, there might not, or the second map, there might not even be time to get to a third map before December 1st. Okay. Yeah. That's not going to save us, because clearly the Supreme Court is they want to do everything they can to make sure that they don't have to get their fingers dirty with this process.
Yeah.
So they could push that deadline back again, but
Yeah, they
it
could
is
just
like
kick it
one good
down
sign.
further.
Yeah.
Okay, so
What do you mean? Sorry. The third portion, they can just draw whatever they want if they vote
Yes.
down the. Then why wouldn't they just fucking do that? They're skeezes anyway. They're just
Exactly.
gonna do that
right.
because they don't give a shit about rules.
Right.
If you give them any more time, they're just gonna fucking be like, "Fuck all three of these maps. We're gonna draw whatever we want."
Well, that's what I was
Yeah.
going to say. What is your opinion of the current map? Because it seems like it's already, fairly favorable to Republicans to begin with.
Right.
I mean, like I said, it's great on equality. It's great on compactness. I think it's a fair map. I mean, it's good. It's I could draw a better map for Democrats, that's for sure. But
Absolutely.
But you're not allowed to. Yeah. You don't have the power to do that.
I don't have the power to do that. But Natalie, you're exactly right. I mean, here's the thing. So when, Justin mentioned October 5th, just to put that in context, that's Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Like this is right around the corner. If Republicans convene that special session, since they're in the majority, they set the timetable. If all they do is they come into the special session, they say, this map is terrible. It silences rural voices. We're voting it down. And they send it back to the LSA. That tells me they're like, fuck it. We're going to the third map and we're amending.
Yeah.
You're exactly right.
And they'll do that shit, and we won't. And that's why we're fucking losers.
And that's why we have the "We Can't Govern" sign at the Democratic National Convention.
So everything we've been talking about so far in the process, Iowa has some obstacles in the way of gerrymandering, like the contiguous, the equal population, the compactness. The compactness especially sort of dissuades you from making the weird snakes and worms
The Dan
out of your
Crenshaw
districts.
map.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But this third map where they can just amend it however they want, is that really however they want, or are there any kind of restrictions or standards there?
We've never gone to a third map. They've never amended a third map, and so we don't know. I mean, again, this is where like interpretation comes in. It's like whatever, you can write rules all you want. There's always going to be interpretation.
Yeah.
And so the interpretation here is, okay, you've got your first round map, second round map, third round map. Third round is written, is drafted by the LSA. It's probably not going to be as good as the first or second round maps because those were their best options, but it's still going to have a very high level of population equality, a very high level of compactness. So since those are the standards that are written into Iowa code, if the legislature amends it to a map that's clearly worse on those standards, does that violate? It seems like it would violate Iowa code because code says maps should be this, they should be this, they should be this. And then the legislature is intervening, taking a perfectly good map and making it shittier. It seems like that would be, and it definitely would go to the courts, like whatever, Mark Elias or whatever. The Democrats would sue. It would go to the courts, but the court it would go to is the Supreme Court. First off, because the state Supreme Court has authority over it, but also because the federal courts have said that gerrymandering is so fucked up in the United States that they cannot deal with it. They're not going to get involved because otherwise that's all they would do is just is just deal with gerrymandering. So they're like, we can't deal with this. State courts, you got to deal with this.
Wow, they're at capacity.
Yeah, isn't that the mark of like a healthy country?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So there was something I wanted to ask you directly. In your 5th article in this series, you urged readers to pay more attention to the redistricting process and to be ready to argue for fair maps in the court of public opinion. So my question for you is, what can we do?
Sure.
And do you think that the decisions that our government makes in this process will actually take our thoughts into account and what we want, or will they just disregard us?
I'm glad. Look, you're hitting a sensitive spot for me, Justin, because as I was writing that, I was like, "Fuck!" I sound like I don't know, like some nonprofit organization saying like whatever, like raise your voices, whatever. But look, I stand by that statement though, because first off, I think it is good. It is certainly better than the alternative like the way the public comment period went is better than the alternative. So imagine like whatever, people didn't give a shit and didn't show up for the public comment, and the track commission wrote a report that said a majority of commenters disapproved of the maps. That would have been a bad fact. So yeah, one part of it was like participating in public comment. But I think the more important part is like the shit we're doing tonight. Where like, this is boring, but like we should be paying attention and, you know, having this conversation and whatever, like, you know, whoever has managed to listen all the way through, you know, like educating ourselves where it's like, okay, there are many ways that Republicans are fucking us over. And this is one of the ways. And look, maybe we can't stop it, but we definitely don't even have a chance of stopping it until we understand how they're fucking us over. So if we just throw up our hands and say, whatever, they're going to do whatever they want, like, why even pay attention? Then they've, you know, we're ceding the ground to them. If we at least, you know, are paying attention, and then, you know, whatever, when the revolution does come, we can come up with a better system where, like, you know, there's not you know, every state gets to make up the rules or whatever.
Yeah, I guess we can learn from the mistakes later.
The deranged QAnon people are paying attention and will be talking. Yeah. Like, that's the other thing is, like, they are, like, all up in school board meetings. They're all in map meetings. They're all showing up for all this shit. So, like, some of us need to, too. Because, like, libertarian sickos are everywhere. Like, they love to do this stuff. Like...
Yeah, I know. I think the school boards is a great example. I don't want to go to a school board meeting. You know, that's boring as shit. But like, you know, these people keep showing up and like they're running so many of so many crazies are running. They're gonna just like, again, elections are about math, and it's like mathematically they're contesting so many races that they're gonna take over. You know, they're gonna do really well this year. It's unfortunate, but it's true.
Yeah. Ugh.
So what that means for redistricting, I think, is like in Iowa, it's like, you know, we don't have a ton of champions at the state house. And so it's easy. I mean, I find it easy to like tune out what's happening at the legislature. But I think this is like one issue, or whatever, like all issues. But like, this is one issue where I think like there's going to be a lot of like very esoteric chatter about this over the next couple months. And like, you know, if someone's like, look, I don't identify at all with the legislative Democratic caucus. Like, and, you know, so the fact that Jennifer Conforst is saying the Republicans are stealing our democracy, if that doesn't mean anything to you, that's fine. But they actually are stealing our democracy. and we also know that, if it does go to the Supreme, you know, the legislature is to some degree, even Republicans to some degree are receptive to public pressure. I'm not saying like whatever, we can protest our way to good maps, but like there is some degree of public pressure there. But then you got the Supreme Court too, which isn't used to public pressure, and they love the idea that they're nonpartisan and whatever. So like, you know, I think there's more leverage there where the lawyers can do their thing, but if there's like this massive outcry, and it's not just the usual voices of like, you know, people who are like at the state house all the time, whatever. Again, I sound like a nonprofit. Evan, what were you going to say?
Oh no, I was just agreeing the fact that like they're going to have to, the appearance of fairness is important to them, and so just agreeing with you. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'm not going to be here like as an optimist. But
I would love some judges to feel upset. So I really hope that I like it when they are uncomfortable.
So if it drags out, I assume there'll be a lot more people paying attention. I mean, you know, if it gets to third map, like obviously it's going to be a big story.
Well, it'll be unprecedented. Yeah. So that'll get some news.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is like the media is, you know, the Democratic Party is dying in Iowa. The media is dying in Iowa. It's like,
well, the media dying does leave a vacuum for us to fill.
This whole thing, you know, there's this Bertolt Brecht quote where it's like, try always, fail always, try again, fail again, you know, fail better. This is like, that's the movement. That's the movement for me, where it's like, are we going to win completely? No, we're not. But it's like, you know, if you don't try, whatever, you're never going to fail better. it's like a good motivational poster quote that I think would be on my wall if I were president.
Yeah, it kind of pushes against the constant demoralization that you get following Iowa politics. So there was a quote from you in your second redistricting article. You wrote this in February of 2021. And I just wanted to make it clear to the people listening that you're not just strictly like a data nerd. You are thinking about this in terms of like how to make things better. So this is what Evan wrote in February. The single best way for Democrats to win congressional seats in Iowa is not to draw favorable districts, but to improve margins in rural counties. As long as Democrats keep losing rural areas, Iowa will be a red state. Part of the work to reverse that trend is on the policy front, building out a rural platform that goes beyond ethanol and broadband, but policy alone won't fix the problem. A bigger part of the solution is having a meaningful presence in rural communities, perhaps through the year-round organizing efforts that new IDP chair Ross Wilburn has been talking up. So it's been a few months since February. Where do you think we stand now? Or where do you think the Democrats stand now? I don't necessarily like using the word we when I talk about that.
Right, yeah. Well, first I'll talk about the positive, which is, in my opinion, just to restate what you said, the current party coalitions are extremely unfavorable to Democrats here in Iowa. There's this party coalition of urban voters, people of color, the professional managerial class that make, that's the core of the Democratic Party. And that's kind of a winning coalition on the national level, but it's very much a losing coalition here in Iowa. Then it is like a badly enough losing coalition that we don't even really have a chance. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's important to pay attention to redistricting, but we shouldn't think that, if we just draw the districts well enough, there's some sort of like legislative map that will give us the majority.
If I can interject here, in all of your hypothetical scenarios that you lay out in your articles, even the most favorable maps for Democrats, it was like 51 or 52%.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So here's one route. There are a couple routes to a Democratic majority in the state house. Mm-hmm. And again, this is why I think electoral politics matters, because unless you think we can overthrow the system of government we have in the near future, it does matter. The question of, do Democrats even have a shot in Iowa matters a little bit. And so, if you look at the numbers, one route to a majority that Democrats have, and this is the one they've been pursuing, is to do better, keep how well they're doing in urban areas where, they sweep all of the Des Moines districts. Yeah. But then they do better in suburban districts, right? And they just don't give a shit about rural districts and small cities. That's the route to the majority that they've been selling. And if you look at the numbers, in order to do that, the suburbs would have to be as Democratic as the core of Des Moines currently is. So that, maybe you think that's realistic. Maybe you think that Ankeny will.
Right. I was going to say Ankeny.
Currently represented by QAnon enthusiasts.
Those suburban people are fickle.
Maybe.
They can't make up their minds.
They flipped a little bit for Democrats last time around. Maybe they'll just keep flipping, and all of a sudden they'll turn into, like Josh Mandelbaum or something. And
that would be great.
So that's one path to a majority. I don't think that's very likely. In fact, I think it's not even worth considering. Yeah. And if you want any other sort of path to majority here in Iowa, even with the population shifts that we've seen over the last 10 years, where people, rural areas are being depopulated and urban areas are growing in population, even with that shift, there still aren't enough urban districts or even suburban districts for Democrats to get to a majority. So you have to win some of these rural areas and you have to win some of these small cities. And I distinguish between the two because, historically Democrats have done, 10 years ago even, Democrats would regularly win places like Newton and Burlington and Boone, these small cities. And, so you could think of, if you're drawing these paths, you can say okay, we're never going to win Sioux County. We're never going to win Lyon County or Adams County, but maybe we'll do better in Newton, and we'll do better in Muscatine or whatever. And that, is a path. So like you could say like, okay, well, if Democrats can hold their gains in suburban areas and they win these small cities again, then they don't really have to do any better in rural areas. That's one path. But, a more realistic path is to say, look, this whole geographically polarized coalition structure is never going to work here in Iowa. It's too rural. Maybe we can wait 40 years and rural depopulation will take its toll and will become, like a Minnesota. But I'm not willing to wait that long. And in fact, I think this like culture war stuff around rural versus urban areas where Democrats literally, this whole, in that line of mine that you quoted so generously back to me, the ethanol and broadband platform is an insult. It's like, I live in a rural area, it's doing, Slater's doing fine because we are close enough to Des Moines and Ames that people can commute. If we were an hour west, we would be dying just like every other small town in Western Iowa is dying. And just to put a really fine point on it, here's another place where like, numbers, whatever, I think can illustrate something. A lot of these rural counties and rural cities in this last census, one thing that we saw was, a lot of these rural areas are shrunk by like 10% over the last 10 years. So like, imagine you're living in an area, any area, and 1 out of every 10 people. So like at the beginning of the 10-year period, so back in 2010, like 100 people, right? And then at the end of it, 10 of them have died and moved away, and no one new has come into the area. Like it's shrunk by that much. And not only that, but it's been shrinking at that rate for 40, 50 years now. Like no wonder, again, I'll relate it to the we can't govern stuff. No wonder people in rural Iowa aren't voting for Democrats. Cause like, if I live in an area like that, and you can imagine like someone who's in like some sort of war torn, whatever area, like similarly, like 10% of the population just like disappears, over the course of a decade. I'm going to want like whatever party is saying, we're going to change things. We're going to like reshuffle the deck and like, maybe things will be better. That's the party I'm going for. That's the candidate I'm going for. And I think we have proof of this in Iowa, where like, if you look at the number of Obama to Trump counties here in Iowa, from 2012 to 2016, not even like 08 to 20, like, sure, like that's a big range. But if you just look at 12 to 16, the number of counties that flipped from Obama to Trump is incredible. And it's like, again, you can think about the different theories here. So like one theory is like, all right, people just got super racist. They woke up and they chose racism. And they chose racism not in Obama's first term, but in his second term. They're like, all right, I'm with you through the Tea Party wave. I'm going to vote for you in 12. But then in that second term, when nothing really happened, I decided I don't like black people and I'm going to vote for Trump. Or you can think back to, okay, what was Obama's brand? Hope and change. What was Trump's brand? I'm going to fuck shit up. And maybe there's like a bit of a continuity
common theme.
What sorts of like policy issues have you seen that people like really do care about in those places that are strengthening? Because like, I mean, the ethanol and broadband is like so condescending and like it like implies like, you guys don't have internet, so we'll give you some internet.
Once you get internet, you'll get smarter over there.
You'll think like us.
Oh wait, all the QAnon people have Facebook, don't they?
Look, I'm a socialist, so I think it's class issues. And I mean, if you're talking rural areas, it's the same sort of class division where you got your Bruce Rastetters and your big farmers on top. And especially if you look at agriculture, like the Democrats like mess this messaging up so badly. But it is true that like farmers over the last 40 years, you want to talk about like neoliberalization, like the number of farmers has shrunk in this state and the like size of those remaining farmers is enormous. And so like the idea that whatever, there's this kind of nostalgic vision that like rural Iowa is just a bunch of, guys with a few hundred acres or whatever.
Mhm.
It just doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
It's all big guys. It's all big farmers, and they are guys, by the way. The landowners might be women because they live longer than dudes, so they, inherit the land. But but the guys who are actually farming the land, it's like big, whatever. And then like people have to like work for those guys. All the light industry has like moved out thanks to, free trade and NAFTA.
Mhm.
It's the same shit. And I think that's why like the small city rural division is like helpful too, where it's like, no, we don't have to win Sioux County, but like maybe there's like an easy economic message, not easy, but like there's a clear economic message
A
that we
blunt
can
economic
talk
message.
to. Yeah, that like maybe, a former presidential candidate that maybe, was on the scene in 2016 and 2020 and kind of demonstrated that there's a message that resonates with people in places like Burlington and Newton and Muscatine. And also, so I think it's a class message. And then I think there's the other piece, which is like the changing demographics of rural Iowa, where if Democrats really cared about winning rural areas, they would support a path to citizenship, because right now there are an insane number, like there are so many Latinx folks out there who just can't vote. Like they are like full on members of the community in these rural areas, but they are totally disenfranchised because the immigration system is so broken. And so, if I were Nancy Pelosi and I'm like, how do I protect my frontline members? It's like a path to citizenship is like the number one way. What are you talking about? I don't know. So now that's my answer.
What if the Democratic Party created a new religion and then set up a church in all of these small cities? Because I don't know, I'm joking, obviously, but like it seems like these communities have, Republicans have church where they have, a sort of like community cohesion and like shared values or whatever, but there isn't really an equivalent to that in...
Evan, there used to be though, and it was called unions, right?
That's true. That's true.
Good thinking.
That's true.
I mean, it doesn't have all the like afterlife stuff.
Right.
It has the social cohesion stuff.
Well, a lot of people say Marxism is a religion.
Well, yeah, I mean, from your lips to Ross Wilburn's ears, I guess.
God, I wish.
He maybe listens to this. I don't know.
Can I speak to that, Justin?
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. I mean, you asked me like, how has it gone? Like you give me this quote, and then how has it gone since then? No, I haven't seen anything. The IDP is doing the same thing it always has.
Yeah, that's the impression I've been getting as well.
Right.
Yeah,
and it's everyone gets their paychecks, right? The consultants get their paychecks, and the operatives get their paychecks, and as long as they're able to convince the national donor class that Iowa is like close to competitive, torrents of money come in every 2 years, not even every 4 years with the caucuses. Like even if the caucuses went away, every 2 years, the Teresa Greenfield and the Bruce Braley, they open the floodgates.
Not J.D. Scholten. He doesn't get any support.
Yeah, he got shut off. Yeah. And they open the floodgates, and everyone gets paid. And if you look at things from like the people who direct the Iowa Democratic Party, like who have a say in what direction it takes, they're all doing great, because like Iowa is just enough of a battleground to still be profitable,
justify their jobs. Yeah.
But if you care about winning, we're doing pretty badly.
Well, I think we've got a little bit of time to get into this can be like the dessert of the episode. So the reason that we kind of started talking to each other, Evan and us, a while back, we did an episode about the IDP's internal review of the 2020 caucus. And Mr. Berger here listened to that episode and enjoyed it. And he was a bit of an insider. We mentioned earlier he was the caucus director for the Bernie Sanders campaign. So I thought it would be fun if we could just get like a little bit of the inside scoop, like how was that process for you? Like that was your job, and it ended up.
Were you?
It ended in just catastrophe.
We were just precinct captains, and we were.
Yeah, I mean, what I said to you, Justin, when you invited me on this time was, it seems like a long time ago, by which I mean I blocked it out, mostly because of sleep deprivation at that time, but also because it was not good. No, I mean, look, Iowa was great for Bernie and right up until the end. I mean, even at the end, it was great for Bernie. So just to remind us all,
when he won the 2020
won the
caucus.
state, right? Yep. Can we get an amen for that, right?
Amen.
And it's one of these funny things. Someone should tell Secretary Buttigieg that the delegates actually didn't matter in the end, just like we said from the beginning that they didn't matter, because he dropped the fuck out pretty early on. So, it was, I mean, look, I'll start with the good stuff and then we can talk about the end. Look, Iowa was great. And this is why, like, I do think the caucus system has whatever I like have some love for it, which is that it's a test of organizing. Right. So like when you get to a state like California or Virginia or whatever, look, it's just an ad war. Like that's how modern campaigns work in those giant places. Mm-hmm. And in Iowa, it is different. And in Nevada, it is different. There is a chance for a campaign like Bernie 2016 to like come out of the woodwork, get some grassroots support. And because it is a smaller event, be a serious candidate that they never would have been if it was a national primary and everyone just like Bloomberg bought a bunch of ads and Bernie, tried to do some stuff, but it was just swamped by money.
He was doing backyard events like the beginning.
Yeah. So I am extremely proud of the work we did on Bernie. Like whatever. It was like, I wish I could go back to it every day.
We do too.
Remember what it felt like, you guys?
It was so good.
It was so good.
And it wasn't just like feel good shit. It was like, no, we are actually out organizing the competition in a way that matters. It's like, like the whole shit with like, all these Democratic Party events and they want us to pay all the money to buy the tickets. And then we just show up and we take over like a street in downtown Des Moines. And then,
that was cool. That was like the New Year's thing, right?
No, it was the Liberty and Justice dinner.
Yes. I remember that.
No, we did a New Year's thing too. But the street protest was the LJ. The day Beto dropped out.
Yes, that was. I was going to say I went to that rally.
Yeah,
and we did march, and that was awesome.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I went with you.
Yeah, you guys left a little early.
But... yeah, because didn't you get a Beto sign then, or was that the state
I got a Beto sign. there was a guy out there collecting them.
Was it Beto?
It was not Beto. But I was like, hey, can I grab one of those? I see it every time I pull into my garage.
Yep.
No, Beto, that was great. I mean, I love that because it's like, this is how candidates think about their supporters. So like, or their, workers. So like,
Employees.
All of the organizers spent like, weeks building up to this, turning everyone out. They're like on the phone every day. It's like, no, you gotta come. We gotta show support for Beto. Like, you gotta come at 6 a.m. Like, you gotta be here at 6 a.m. You gotta get up at 4 and, in Mitchellville or whatever. And you gotta drive here. And then they get there and the candidate, like, nowhere to be seen. And they're waving signs, right? And they're sweating. Someone passes out from heat exhaustion. And then at 4 o'clock, Beto's like, Beto's he's going to talk down by the river. He walks up and he's like, I just can't, I don't want to do this anymore. Bye. Bernie would never do that shit to us. Look, for all his flaws.
All right. So you said the good. Now it's time to talk shit, right?
No. I still got more good. Justin, that was the highlight? Okay. Oh, my God. No, he thought that was the highlight. No.
Beto dropping out was everyone's highlight.
I'm just so excited for the negativity.
Lay it on me. No. I mean, the peak was like those satellite caucuses the night before. So, this is the whole compromise between the DNC and the Iowa Democratic Party, where it's like DNC says, you have to have some sort of way for people to participate who are busy on a Monday night. And the IDP says, okay, great, we'll do a virtual caucus. And the DNC says, Oh, no, we didn't mean that.
Yeah.
Back to the drawing board. And then they came up with the satellite caucus idea, which was great for us. And I joke, but it was precisely because it was an organizing event, right? So Joe Biden did not bother organizing in-state satellite caucuses. Their campaign did organize satellite caucuses of Iowa retirees in Florida, and they tried to compete for those out-of-state satellite caucus delegates. Right. But in-state, it's like everyone knew, and we were all operating under the same rules. Everyone knew if you can find someone, all you got to do is find someone who says, I can't make it. I want to do a satellite caucus at my community center or at my workplace or at my nursing home. And the IDP basically just approved them all. Yeah, and we took it seriously because we're like, oh, wow, I can't remember how many delegates were at stake there. It was like 4 or something, state delegates and SDs. And we took it seriously. We're like, we're going to fight for every last one, and we're going to organize the hell out of this thing. And, there was some great staff. Jonah Furman, shout out to Jonah. He writes for Labor Notes now, but he was an organizer with Bernie, came in and organized like all those workplaces for satellite caucuses, some John Deere workplaces, going on strike perhaps in 4 hours.
Yeah.
And there were, so there were satellite caucuses that happened earlier in the day on caucus day, and we won them like 90% to 10 or like 85-15 or whatever.
That was only like a bunch of factory workers.
Yeah, there's a bunch of meatpacking like immigrants. Yeah. And there's I know the iconic photo where it's like they all have Bernie signs, and there's like one lady in the corner with a Warren sign, and she's not very happy.
That was UFCW in Ottumwa. But that was like one story out of many. I mean, I went to a satellite caucus because obviously I was going to be a little bit busy when the actual caucuses were happening. So I went to the Drake one. Again, it was like an organizing event. Like you could just turn out as many people as you wanted. I didn't have to give in, all I had to do was say like, I'm going to be working or whatever. I could just show up and do that one. And it was great. We won that one. We won all of them. It was great. So that was the high point. We came into it. It's like, yes. And then, like it's, they start, the start time comes. We have this entire like mini call center of out-of-state volunteers who are like manning the phones, taking calls from our precinct captains. And, I had a direct line to the IDP. And if there are problems that we needed to escalate, and, it's like 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, like, it's like, okay, this is going well. It's like, all right, we should be seeing some results soon. Top leadership is in this headquarters. We've got, these very complicated, way above my head, these very complicated programs to say, okay, we're winning, we're outperforming among this demographic, we're underperforming among this demographic, therefore we think we're going to win, we're thinking we're going to lose. And the one premise was that we would have some sort of data. In hindsight, that was a mistake to assume that. So, I mean, most of my caucus night was explaining to people like, no, there still aren't any results.
So you guys had your own call center, huh?
Yeah. Oh God, yes, of course.
Do you know how many people you had on the phones?
I know your next question.
It was like 30, which is probably what the IDP had.
Yeah, I think that's more.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact numbers. It's been a while since we read that document, but yeah, it seems like one campaign being like as staffed as the party that night seems
My
wrong.
mom just met someone who was actually in the IDP boiler room just randomly. Like she went into a law office for some legal matters, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I was one of the people on the phones in the boiler room."
We had some people in there. I mean, they weren't like placed or anything. But
yeah.
You had plants, yeah.
No, we did not have plants, Justin. And so that and then it gets to like whatever. If you're asking my personal story, I was extremely exhausted.
Yeah.
I had a 1-year-old at home at the time. And that I hadn't seen for a couple months. And, it gets to be midnight or whatever. It's like, okay, well, we got to start calling our precinct captains and compiling our own results.
Yeah.
And we did that until 4 a.m. The fucking volunteers were incredible. I mean, of course, like across the entire campaign, like that's what powered the Bernie campaign. But the out-of-state volunteers who were there, they came to Iowa. They were like, we're going to be here for the caucus. We're going to like help win the state. You know, it's like they were, it was insane. Like we had to kick them out at the end. You know, it was like 4 a.m. It's like, look, I'm going home. I'm sorry. You got to go home too. Like you can't call it. And the other insane thing was that people were picking up. Imagine a phone bank that you're doing at 2 a.m. And people are answering and they're having these long conversations where they're like, yeah, you know, the Buttigieg captain was an asshole. I think they counted the numbers wrong. It was surreal. And then, you know, I went home and slept for a couple hours, went back the next day and it's like, all right, what's our plan of attack? And we compiled all this shit and I mean, everyone knows this, but just to say it out loud again, the numbers were a joke. The official numbers were a joke. And I especially feel bad saying this now because people who aren't super plugged into Democratic politics, like it sounds like I'm a QAnon guy or whatever, like, you know, a Trump guy. Right. Where it's like, no, the numbers were fake. No, they actually were fake because it was all run by non-professional, like people who don't run elections, right? Like that was not their primary job. And so like, I just want the record to state, like, I just want the history books to be written. Like, I know the history books are going to be written where it's like in February of 2020, Bernie said, these numbers are fake. And then in November of 2020, sure enough, Trump said the numbers are fake. It was like the year of fake numbers. No, they were totally different things. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Or like horse shit theory. Sorry. Too corny. So, but no, I mean, I just want everyone to remember the numbers were actually fake. Anyone could look at the numbers, right? I mean, I don't know.
We were correcting stuff on Twitter. Yeah. The data was out there and like we could see the mistakes and like it wasn't being corrected on the official website and everything. Yeah.
Do you remember the data dump when Deval Patrick took the lead?
No, but that's interesting.
Really?
Yeah,
I like vaguely remember that he had a campaign, kind of.
No one at our precinct knew who that was.
No one at any precinct knew who that was. The columns were mislabeled, so they publicly released some data, and the Deval, you know, they put the Warren stuff in the Deval Patrick or something. So it was bad, but again, I had this great team. I mean, again, shout out to Harry, Steph, you know, Clay, Finn, Rashad. Like we had this amazing team. We were just in this room at Bernie HQ. Everyone else left. You know, the whole thing with presidential campaigns is like the caucuses are over, it evaporates. That's a huge problem with Iowa, I think, is that everyone thinks about politics in terms of like, oh yeah, I volunteer every 4 years for my preferred candidate. And then, you know, like the organizing infrastructure disappears and like, you know, we're just kind of adrift, you know? So everyone's packing up, people are saying their goodbyes, you know, whatever. And like my team was just in this room, you know, with monitors like surrounding the walls and a whiteboard. And we're like, oh yeah, you know, we come up with this whole process for tracking irregularities. We compile this report, we send it in. We request, you know, a recanvass. And then, you know, I go to the recanvass and it's clear that some of the people there didn't know what the rules of the caucuses were. Some of the people doing the recanvass did not know what the rules of the caucus were. And then we did the recount. And at that point it was like, this is a broken system. So in spite of all this, again, so I'll bring it back to the optimism.
Okay.
Again, I do think like the caucuses are worth saving. You know, you were like, let's all shit talk the caucuses. I think they're worth saving. And the reason I think they're worth saving. Okay, laugh some more. Yeah, that's fine.
No, I know what I'm saying. Okay, yeah.
No, it's an organizing event. So I think it is a relevant consideration. So let's look at 2020. Joe Biden did not do very well in Iowa.
Yeah.
Precisely because he was not running an organizing-centric campaign. He was not doing any organizing. It was all just like name recognition and media.
Yep.
And that was enough to win the nomination. But the general election was way closer than it should have been. It never should have been that close.
Yeah.
And that was precisely because it was very easy for the Biden campaign to say, when the pandemic hit, we're not going to knock doors. We're not going to do any field. Thank God we don't have to do this stuff because all we want to do is media and coast on name recognition. And that, I think, can be directly traced back to his Iowa caucus loss. That wasn't just a fluke. That was an important moment that showed us what kind of campaign he was running and precisely why he was a weak candidate in the general election. And it showed how Bernie Sanders was strong on that front and would not have just given up the ghost and let Trump knock doors in November. I mean, whatever, maybe it wasn't knocking doors, but like the organizing team on Bernie was the best organizing team that has ever been assembled. And those people would not have sat by idly and said, oh, like there's a once in a century pandemic. That's real. We need to take that into consideration. But then they would have said, how do we organize in these conditions? How do we continue to talk to people and have real conversations where we actually move them on the issues instead of just saying, do you support Biden? Yes or no? They say no. All right, we're not going to talk to you anymore. Like, we just want to collect the yeses and make sure you vote.
Yeah.
And I think that's a relevant consideration. That's why Iowa is important. Boom. That's my argument.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
it rewards enthusiasm, and that's what we need more of.
And I mean, I was still text banking long after we were a lost cause during the pandemic. So, I mean, there's truth there. Like, to have people dedicated to like actually moving people, I think, the Democrats, I don't know what 2024 is going to look like, but probably not great. Because this isn't like a continuing building. It's just like a coasting, as you said.
Well, yeah, no, it's the we can't govern, we hate life and ourselves. It's also it relates back to the census stuff. Look, it's not only a problem for us here in Iowa that Democrats don't care about rural people.
Yeah,
it's a problem for Democrats in the entire country because the Senate is drastically tilted in favor of rural states. And so that's why we're seeing Joe Manchin have all the, he's holding up the entire process, is because Democrats are like, oh, we'll just keep winning urban areas. It feels really good. I'm here in New York. I'm here in LA. We've swept it. We control every level of government. Let's just replicate this across the country. All we have to do is win cities. That's not a winning strategy in Iowa. And it's also increasingly not a winning strategy nationally.
Yeah, when we don't have an actual like proportional representative house of government. Yeah, of course. All right. Well, Evan, I know that you have a hard out in a couple minutes here, so I just want to thank you for coming on the show and really digging into an issue that is important and hard to pay attention to. It's good to talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about and is actually like enthusiastic about this.
Yeah.
That was awesome. I kept my attention the whole time.
I don't know if you're lying, but I appreciate you saying it.
I am not lying.
No, she is being 100% sincere.
I'm being 100% sincere.
Yeah, it's good to know there are people like you out there who are ideologically aligned with us. So keep it up, man.
Yeah, you guys are rock. I mean, you're doing better work than I am with winning hearts and minds,
Maybe. I think we're. Yeah. We present persuasive arguments every day. Well, that'll do it for our 69th episode. Thanks again to Evan Berger, our guest. Evan, is there anything you would like our listeners to do, like look you up online, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Twitter, not super active, Evan_Berger. I mean, I think what people should do is pay attention next week when the special session comes around and we can see how badly the Republicans want to fuck us.
Yeah. And I imagine you will be writing further on the subject, so we can read your articles on that.
Indeed.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Good night.
An unrulable expanse with his nose. The areas where the water flows. So